not just the quantity, it's also the quality. What it puts on the Israeli side are, first of all, the pleasant suburbs of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which of course Israel would like to keep. It includes arable land, some of the most important arable land, and crucially it includes the water resources for the region. Israel already exploits most of the water west of the Jordan, but this includes the main aquifer. So everything behind the annexation wall will be annexed. It includes Greater Jerusalem. There's something called Jerusalem, but that's not anything like what Jerusalem ever was. It's many times the size of Jerusalem. The actual Jerusalem was annexed illegally in violation of orders and Security Council, repeated orders. But then it was greatly expanded. So what's called Jerusalem goes well into Judea. I think it's maybe 5 times or so the original area, roughly that. But the debate right now about Har Chomah, the new settlements, that's an expanded Jerusalem. It's never Jerusalem. So it includes expanded Jerusalem. It cuts off a big piece of the West Bank. It includes the Jordan Valley, which means everything else is in prison. The Jordan Valley is being settled, and Palestinians are being driven out of it by the usual means, denying them the possibility of access to water, rejecting an effort to build a school, and so on. The usual quiet means of essentially ethnic cleansing. So it includes the Jordan Valley, a big piece of the West Bank, again, arable land, and leaves the rest in prison. And then, in addition to that, there are salients cutting through. There's one east of Jerusalem, which goes virtually to Jericho, essentially bisects the West Bank. It includes the town of Ma'adat Damim, a town established in the 1970s, but developed primarily under Clinton. That essentially cuts the West Bank in half. And in the northern part of the West Bank, there are 2 other salients. The one going through the town of Ariel, the town in the West Bank, of course, all of this is illegal. And another one that goes through Damim. It breaks up the remaining region into unviable cantons. Now, Israel has made, let me say a word about Gaza at this point. Ever since, by the 1980s, Israel recognized that it's a mistake to try to hold on to Gaza. It had already been virtually destroyed. The occupation was unlivable. It was just a nuisance. Not much point keeping it so that people from Tel Aviv go to the beach on Sunday. With the Oslo agreements in 1991, 1993, established that Gaza and the West Bank are an indissoluble unit, one territorial unit. So any crime that's carried out in the West Bank is perfectly legitimate to resist it in Gaza, one unit. But Israel and the United States have been dedicated, since it's almost 20 years now, to separate Gaza from the West Bank. Now that continues the imprisonment of, quite apart from what it means for people in Gaza, it continues the imprisonment of the West Bank because it loses its outlet to the sea. And now it's really a prison. Of course, it's totally illegal. It means that, say, if a person in Gaza is, needs medical assistance that they could get in a Palestinian hospital in East Jerusalem, they have to go through the Israeli authorities. But now they also have to go through Palestinian Authority and Hamas authorities who are bad enough in their own ways. But that means you can't get medical treatment, you can't get medicines in, you can't go to school. If you happen to be a student who lives in Gaza and studies in the West Bank, you can't get there and so on. The idea is to break them apart, 2 separate entities. The plan for Gaza is just to destroy it. I'll say a little bit, since we're talking about the history about what happened in Gaza. In Gaza, the repression was pretty bitter, but it became much worse. Israel did finally withdraw a few thousand settlers from Gaza. That was great phenomenon. You looked at the Boston Globe, and it had front page pictures of the little boy pleading with the soldiers, don't destroy my house, cries of never again, and so on and so forth. It was the great event of withdrawal from Gaza. It was all staged, completely staged, for international attention. If Israel wanted to withdraw from Gaza, they could have done it very simply. All they had to do was announce it was in August, on August 1st, that the IDF, the army, is withdrawing from Gaza. At that point, the 7,000 or 8,000 settlers who were there illegally in subsidized homes would climb into the lorries that are provided to them and be taken to their subsidized homes illegally in the West Bank. And it wouldn't have made the front page of the Boston Globe. In fact, nobody would even notice it. But that's just the point. The point was to stage a national trauma. This was so transparent that it was being ridiculed in the Israeli press. But what made it even more transparent was that it was replaying a script from 1982, after the Camp David agreements, in which Israel and the United States accepted Sadat's 1971 offer. They had to evacuate Yamit, the city they had built in occupied Sinai and the other settlements. So a big national trauma was staged. Could have done it exactly this way, but they made it look like a huge trauma. And in fact, there was I remember a headline in our main newspaper which said, "National Trauma 82." Okay, that was the game played for the benefit of the Goyim, out there. Back in 82, they redid it in 2005 with Gaza, and they said it very frankly. They said, look, this is just a way of settling the West Bank. Immediately after the so-called withdrawal, which kept Gaza totally under control, incidentally, but shortly after that, the Palestinians really committed a major crime. There was a free election, only free election in the Arab world, carefully monitored. Everyone agreed it was free and fair, January 2006. The vote came out the wrong way. The U.S. attitude towards elections is extremely clear. If they come out the right way, we hail them as a triumph of democracy. If we come out the wrong way, we overthrow the government, we invade, we sanction, and so on, which is exactly what happened. The vote came out the wrong way. Instantly, within days, the United States and Israel instituted harsh sanctions. Europe went along, more or less, not quite that harsh. A couple of months later, the U.S. and Israel decided to try to overthrow the government with a military coup. So they organized a military coup in Gaza run by Fatah strongman, Ahmad Dahlan. The coup was beaten back. The elected government, Hamas, beat back the coup and took power. They're not nice people, incidentally. They run Gaza quite brutally. I don't like them at all, but they were the elected government, whatever you think. They beat back the military coup, and that is a real crime. At that point, the U.S. and Israel imposed a very harsh siege, extremely harsh. But Gaza was barely livable by land, by sea, of course, by air. Fishermen are driven to the shore so they can't fish. It's very harsh. And that was the punishment for first electing the wrong people, and secondly, beating back a military coup intended to overthrow the government. We go up to 2008, something quite interesting happened. And there was rocket fire in both directions. Most of it comes from Israel. In fact, by June 2005, 2006, I think about 8,000 shells, Israeli shells hit Gaza. The proportions are proportional to the power, naturally. But there was Hamas rocket fire. In June 2008, a ceasefire agreement was reached between Hamas and Israel. Israel didn't live up to the ceasefire. Its commitment was to end the siege. They didn't do that. But Hamas did live up to the ceasefire. We have that from official Israeli authorities. look up the official Israeli website, government website. It says, yeah, there was no rocket fire after the agreement until November of 2008. In that month, Israel invaded Gaza, killed half a dozen Hamas militants. Hamas rockets followed, many more Israeli rockets. There were casualties all on the Palestinian side. In December, Hamas offered to reinstitute the ceasefire. The Israeli cabinet considered it and rejected it. They preferred to use violence, and they invaded Gaza. Now that's the December 2008, January 2009 invasion, which was quite brutal and destructive. In the West, that's almost universally regarded as a legitimate act of self-defense, which was disproportionate. Even the human rights groups say that, Goldstone report and so on. That's totally false. Israel, of course, has a right of self-defense, but the issue is, does it have the right of self-defense by force? That's always the issue. Everyone has a right of self-defense.